anything that you'd like to say, Karmelo? Do you have anything that you'd like to say to the victim, to the family of the victim? Why were you armed, sweetheart? Karmelo, why were you armed at school? Explain your self-defense. How is this self-defense?
A 17-year-old kid went to a track meet one morning. He never came home, and the teenager who killed him is now sitting in a Texas prison cell. But the story is far from over. April 2nd, 2025, Frisco, Texas. It's a regular school day, except dozens of high school students from across the district have gathered at David Kuykendall Stadium for a track and field competition. The weather isn't cooperating. Rain is coming down, and students are scrambling to find shelter under their school tents set up in the bleachers. It's the kind of chaotic, casual atmosphere you'd expect at any high school event. Kids are moving around, laughing, trying to stay dry. Nobody came there expecting anything to go wrong, but something did go wrong. Something went very, very wrong. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome to Shadow Crime. Hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon right now so you never miss an episode. We cover the cases the world needs to hear about, and this one has been burning up every conversation from Texas to the entire country. Stay with me. Now, let me tell you about Austin Metcalf. Austin was 17 years old, a junior at Frisco Memorial High School. He wasn't just any student. This kid had a 3.97 GPA. He was a linebacker on the football team and even earned MVP honors. He competed in track and field. By every account, Austin was the kind of teenager parents dream of raising, driven, talented, with a future wide open in front of him. His father, Jeff Metcalf, described him as someone who had everything ahead of him, a kid full of promise. And then there's Karmelo Anthony, also 17 at the time, a student at Frisco Centennial High School. Karmelo was no slouch either. His own father, Andrew Anthony, described him as an honor student and team captain. His track coach later testified that teammates actually nominated Karmelo for a team captaincy. By the time this case exploded nationally, both of these boys had people in their corners telling the world they were good kids. And maybe they both were. But on the morning of April 2nd, 2025, something between them turned deadly. Here's what happened. During a rain delay at the track meet, Karmelo Anthony walked over and sat down under Memorial High School team tent. Not his school's tent, Memorial's tent. Students from Memorial, including Austin Metcalf, noticed and asked him to leave. Witnesses say they asked him repeatedly. One witness testified it happened at least 15 times. 15 times. And each time, Karmelo refused. What started as a simple request to move escalated into a heated back and forth. Witnesses say the atmosphere under that tent got tense fast. Words were exchanged. Tempers were rising. And then it happened. Austin Metcalf pushed Karmelo Anthony. That push would cost him his life.
Self-defense! For self-defense! Because somebody touched him!
You got 35?
35 years for self-defense! If he was right, we wouldn't even be here today. It would have never came to court. It would have never been no handcuffs. We wouldn't be here today. But because somebody didn't know how to go get him a dog like we all are taught, somebody's life was on the ground and somebody's in jail for something that should have been self-defense.
That shit crazy. I went to school over here.
Self-defense. They said we're supposed to know how to act around white people. Say, what for? What is that? What is self-defense? Is self-defense not somebody touching you that you don't want touching you and you defending yourself? What is self-defense? Murder? Murder? I don't want to see us in anybody's business if it's not a black business. We're holding our dollars. We will make them feel what we're feeling today. You got to commit to it. And that's all I got to say. We're fighting for anyways. We're fighting for you, Karmelo. We're fighting for you. We're going to get our dollars together. We're going to get our dollars together. We need a better defense team for Karmelo.
And you heard, we don't feel like justice was served properly. We don't feel like it was a fair trial. We honestly, deep in our hearts, don't feel like it was fair. We have a lot of questions. We're wondering why certain things were sealed. And we out here, we hurt, man. We hurt. We just hurt. And we still fighting for Karmelo. We love you and we still fighting for you. We're gonna fight for you.
What happens next is the part that changed everything. Because in the seconds after that push, Karmelo Anthony didn't walk away. He didn't throw a punch. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a pocket knife. And before anyone under that tent could process what was happening, he stabbed Austin Metcalf directly in the chest. One witness testified that right before things got physical, Karmelo looked at Austin and said, "Touch me and see what happens." Another witness heard him say, "I'm not leaving, F*** you all," when students kept asking him to go. So when Austin finally put his hands on him, Karmelo made a choice that ended another teenager's life in seconds. The Collin County Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Elizabeth Ventura, later testified in court about what that knife actually did to Austin's body. She described a gaping 2.5-inch stab wound straight through the heart. She said it was not survivable, not treatable, not a close call. The moment that blade entered Austin Metcalf's chest, he was gone. Several jurors visibly broke down when autopsy photos were shown in court. Austin's own family had to be asked to leave the courtroom before that testimony even began because it was that graphic. Think about that for a second. His family had to walk out of the room to avoid seeing what was done to their son. That's the reality of what happened under that tent. Now here's where it gets complicated, and I want you to really pay attention here, because this is where the case splits people down the middle. Karmelo Anthony never denied the stabbing. Not once. What his defense argued was that he was justified, that he was scared, that when Austin pushed him, he was already surrounded, already outnumbered, already feeling threatened by a group of students who had been pressuring him to leave. His attorney, Mike Howard, stood in front of that jury and told them that Texas law does not require you to wait until you get hit before defending yourself. He said Karmelo acted in a split second of chaos and fear. But prosecutors told a completely different story. They said Karmelo was the aggressor from the start, that he walked into a tent that wasn't his, refused every chance to simply walk away, escalated the situation with his words, and only ended up in that confrontation because he chose to stay and provoke it. First Assistant District Attorney Bill Werski looked at the jury and said plainly, "This is not self-defense. This is murder, plain and simple." And the evidence? It was heavy. Surveillance footage from the stadium captured the whole sequence of events. The knife, a folding blade with a silver handle and blood still visible on it, was recovered at the scene along with Karmelo's blue backpack. 21 witnesses took the stand for the prosecution alone. Karmelo was arrested the same day. He was crying, witnesses said, asking whether Austin would survive and whether what he did could be considered self-defense. He was charged with first-degree murder before the day was over.
Attorneys for the Texas teenager convicted of stabbing a fellow high school student athlete to death have filed a notice of appeal. A jury sentenced 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony to 35 years in prison for the fatal stabbing of Austin Metcalf earlier this week. His legal team argued it was self-defense. CBS News correspondent Jonah Kaplan sat down exclusively with Anthony's parents after the verdict came down. They spoke about the trial, their son, and the divisions in the Texas suburb.
My son didn't intend to hurt anyone. My son was defending himself.
It took less than 3 hours for a jury to reject 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony's claims of self-defense in the stabbing death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. Prosecutors argued Anthony intentionally killed Metcalf after being taunted and shoved by Metcalf and his teammates at a high school track meet.
Take us inside that courtroom. What stuck out to you?
What stuck out to me, number one, was the all-white jury. But I was trying to be, like, all right, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, the truth is on our side.
At the sentencing hearing, the defense called only one witness on Anthony's behalf, his mother, Kayla Hayes.
What did you tell the jury?
To have mercy on my son.
What do you say to his grieving family?
It's unfortunate to where nobody wins. We've all been hurt by this. Everybody.
That poor boy is fixing to experience a life that I would not wish upon anyone.
Austin Metcalf's father, Jeff, called Anthony's sentencing bittersweet.
What it boils down to for me is this. Austin will never walk through that door again and never give me a hug.
The case drew national attention, prompting protests in support of both teens. And both families involved say they've received threats.
This morning, I've had multiple emails, texts, threatening me, calling me all sorts of names.
During our interview, the Anthonys made a point to call back one man they say continues to dox them.
Why are you calling me, man?
To make fun of you.
Both families urged supporters to tame their emotions.
I forgave him. But people need to understand about forgiveness. Forgiveness was not for him. Forgiveness was for me, so I don't carry the rage, the hate, and that around. It will eat me up like cancer.
At the end of the day, there's nothing we can say or do for people to accept us.
I'm Jonah Kaplan in McKinney, Texas.
CBS News legal contributor Caroline Polisi joins us now to break down the key aspects of this case. Caroline, good morning. Great to have you here. So many people online have deep opinions on this, despite not being where the incident happened. Everybody is brokenhearted here, but help us understand the jury selection process and the quick deliberations, and if it might be something used on appeal because of how it played out.
Yeah, very divisive trial. It tore a community apart, Errol, which is why there's so much focus on this part. And I think particularly in the sentencing, they came back really quickly. 3-hour deliberation, meaning they wholesale rejected this concept that the defense put forward of some sort of self-defense. Remember, the facts are disputed, but we do know that there was potentially some sort of altercation, a push, perhaps an inciting incident that led to the lead up of this really, really tragic death, which has now been deemed a murder. And so what you see now is Karmelo Anthony has filed a notice of appeal. We don't know the arguments that he's going to make. It's a procedural thing that he's done now, basically alerting the court that he's going to appeal. And you do note there are some issues here, I think, even leading into the trial that are not necessarily legal arguments about what the evidence in the trial, but are how the jury was selected. There's what's known as a Batson challenge his attorneys made. The prosecution used some of their peremptory challenges to take out black jurors, potential black jurors on this case. There were no black jurors eventually seated on the case. And so I think that will be an issue on appeal. I also think the defense did a disservice at the sentencing phase here for Karmelo Anthony. They only called one character witness, his mother. They had the opportunity to present a more compelling mitigation case. 35 years, it's a long time. The jury didn't accept this heat of passion argument that was put forward in the instructions. So there are a lot of issues here. Legally speaking, very quick decision on the part of the jury.
And online, people have their own opinions. Both families are being harassed, as we just saw in this report. And the jury selection process, as you noted, was interesting as well. But the defense didn't bring up a lot of character witnesses for Karmelo Anthony himself to help bolster this sense his side was making that it was self-defense. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, so two things. He didn't take the stand in the case in chief in his own defense. Typically, criminal defendants don't take the stand, but in self-defense cases in particular, you kind of have to. They do, because there's a subjective element. We really needed to hear him, or jurors would really need to hear him say that he subjectively was fearful of his life. These two twin brothers, as alleged, were much larger in stature than he was. They had told him to leave. There was apparently a push. So that would have been key testimony. And then on the sentencing phase, typically you would see calling potentially teachers, coaches in this young man's life to try to portray him not as a monster, but as somebody who potentially maybe deserves some mercy in the sentencing phase. So that was a failing.
And we have to note, for the Metcalfs, they've lost their son. He is gone, and now the decision has been made that he was murdered. As we see the appeal process play out, though, what might change? Just the sentencing, perhaps?
Well, it's a very high bar to get an appeal. He filed as an indigent, meaning he doesn't have the resources to retain an attorney on appeal. He would like the state to pay for that. There are some issues whether or not that's going to be granted. There was a GoFundMe page in this case to raise funds for his legal defense, which could play into his claim of indigence. And so this will take a long time for sure. Typically, I don't see this going well for him in the appeals process. Criminal defendants always appeal their convictions. Very difficult to get something overturned. So I think we're going to see him, serve this sentence.
And my final question to you, just as we watch this play out, it may take time as an appeal unfolds. Both families are being harassed. Yeah. This is ripped up a community, and even online, folks don't agree on what happened or the outcome. Does that play a role at all in how a judge might decide how quickly to decide on things, or is it completely irrelevant?
I don't think so. Look, there's more of a spotlight on this, so they may feel compelled to, really take a strong look at the legal arguments because they know everybody's watching. But no, really, these types of issues are meant to stay outside of the courtroom. That's why our system is supposed to be inoculated from these things. The jury was going to be sequestered if they were going to deliberate overnight because you want to really keep them insulated from any of this outside noise. And there has been a lot of noise on this case.
Yeah, Caroline Polisi, appreciate you being here explaining the key legal aspects.
Thank you
so much.
So now we get the part that had the entire country watching, the trial. And let me tell you, this courtroom was a battlefield from day one. Jury selection alone drew nearly 600 prospective jurors. 600 people. That tells you everything about how big this case had become. And when the jury was finally seated, something immediately stood out. Not a single black juror made the panel. Zero. In a case involving a black teenager who killed a white teenager in a county that had already become a flashpoint for racial tension, the jury had no black representation whatsoever. That detail alone set social media on fire before opening statements even began. Outside the courthouse, every single day of that trial, crowds gathered. Protesters, supporters, advocacy groups, including members of the new Black Panther Party, showed up to demonstrate. The judge had to impose a gag order and ban all electronics from the courtroom just to keep things from spiraling further. This was not a quiet, local trial. This was a national moment. And the fundraiser? By the time jury selection started, Karmelo Anthony's family had raised over $600,000 through a Give, Send, Go campaign. $600,000 from people across the country who believed he deserved a proper defense. People who saw a black kid being railroaded. People who saw a self-defense case being prosecuted as murder. The money poured in because millions of people were watching and felt something wasn't right. Inside the courtroom, though, the prosecution was building a devastating case. 21 witnesses, surveillance footage, autopsy photos that made jurors cover their mouths. One teenage witness summed it up in a way that clearly stuck with the jury when he said what Karmelo did was lethal force against non-lethal force. A shove versus a knife to the heart. That contrast was something the prosecution hammered on repeatedly. The defense fought back hard. They pointed to the chaotic conditions, the size differences between the teams, and argued that Karmelo was surrounded and afraid. His coach testified he was a good kid, a team captain, an honor student. But even that backfired slightly when the prosecutor asked the coach directly whether any athlete should bring a knife to a track meet. The answer was no. After less than 3 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with a guilty verdict for murder, not manslaughter, murder. They also rejected what's called a sudden passion claim during sentencing, which could have reduced his time. Karmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in prison. He will not be eligible for parole until he has served 17 and a half years. The next day, his parents went on the Breakfast Club and said, "We are in a nightmare. It doesn't feel real." His father said they never knew how cruel the world could be. And Karmelo himself, just one day after sentencing, filed a notice of appeal, stating in his own court document that he was too poor to afford an attorney and needed one appointed. The case now heads to the 5th District Court of Appeals in Dallas, where his legal team says there are several important issues worth challenging, with jury selection expected to be a central focus. Austin Metcalf's father stood in that courtroom and said, People think grief is sadness. It is not. It is rage. Pure un filter drage. Two families. Two boys who by every account had futures ahead of them. One is buried. One is in a prison cell in Grimes County, Texas. Now I want to leave you with something to think about. If Karmelo truly felt his life was in danger, why did he have a knife at a school track meet in the first place? Was a push from a teenager really enough justification to pull a blade? And if the jury had looked different? If even one of those seats had been filled by someone who looked like Karmelo, would the verdict have been the same? Does the justice system treat every teenager the same when the races are reversed? Or does the zip code, the county, and the color of the jury box quietly decide the outcome before the evidence is even weighed? These are the questions this case leaves behind, and they are not comfortable ones. If this episode made you think, if it made you feel something, then do me a favor right now. Like this video, subscribe to Shadow Crime, and hit that bell so you never miss a case. We are not done talking about this one. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Where do you stand on this?